Iran has a new president. The European Union welcomed the victory of reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian. He's a heart surgeon, a lawmaker, and former health minister. Now, what will this mean for the people of Iran and us here in the West? To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, first of all, any surprise with this election victory?
Well, it's not really an election, it's more of a selection. So different tyrants, same tyranny. You set up the intro to this question beautifully, except you didn't do the air quotes for reformist, because that's exactly what it is. He's not a reformist. Anyone who had a chance in this election had to be part of and cut from the cloth of this regime, which is tyranny. It is murderous. It is terroristic, and you have to agree with that. You have to be on board with that in order to run. Now, he may have a different day job, but we know that he has a history of supporting this regime. He has a history of supporting the Revolutionary Guard. He has a history of supporting hijab for women and boasted about that. I have a lot of that on my social media and just supporting a lot of what he's done in the past. But just to tell people, especially the media, the mainstream media in the West, who is just fawning over this reformist, the first reformist candidate in 2 decades. No, it's nothing like that. There's going to be no changes because everything that goes on in that country has to be basically approved by the entire regime, and of course the supreme leader, who has not changed. That is Khamenei, and that has not changed. And again, remember, anyone who had again run for this election had to be approved by the council, and therefore is going to be from the same mindset and ideology. So nothing will change, unfortunately. In fact, a lot of people feel like this is a drawback because it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So someone who can perhaps approach the West, dupe the West further, get more money out of the West, but behind the scenes be continuing with their nuclear program, with supporting, of course, the proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and others, and continue with their dirty work. So I don't think we're going to see any change, unfortunately. But the one thing I will say, and I'll end with this, is that we saw the lowest voter turnout that we've ever seen in Iran, and that is the people speaking. We have seen a referendum. We've seen the people saying, we don't care who's running. It could be Mickey Mouse. We're not going to legitimize this regime by voting and participating in this election.
Now, speaking of the vote, Lisa, there was also outrage that U.S. President Joe Biden allowed Iran's terrorist-sponsored regime to hold voting in the United States.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the most maddening things that could have happened, given the fact that Iran's regime has American blood on its hands, the fact that they have American hostages, the fact that right now we see hostages that Hamas has that are American. That is Iran's proxy. So it is, the same hand. The fact that they allowed them to participate or to bring their property onto U.S. soil and to have American Iranians vote in their election is just it signals to the policy and the strategy that the White House has used for the last almost 4 years, and that it has been so dangerous and has emboldened this regime to allow them to have that kind of access here. Why should we allow that when they should be under sanction? When they should be, marginalized and basically told that they have to have a change in behavior. They have to stop supporting terror proxies. They have to stop shooting at U.S. assets in the Red Sea. I mean, imagine they're shooting at us and we're allowing them to bring their polling boxes here on U.S. soil. So a lot of people were outraged, and very rightfully so.
The terrorist group Hamas informed another terrorist organization, Hezbollah, it had agreed to a proposal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. But Lisa, we're continuing to see tensions escalate, however, between Hezbollah and Israel on the Jewish state's northern border with Lebanon.
Absolutely. And there are many, many fires raging right now in northern Israel, coming from missiles that were fired by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon into Israel. And this has been continuing on for a long time now, even before October 7th. But I think a lot of people feel like this war is just starting. No, it was going on before, and even on October 7th, October 8th, October 9th, there were missiles coming into northern Israel from Hezbollah. This is not something that Israel wanted to escalate too quickly. Obviously, the Ayatollah in Tehran is pulling the puppet strings and really trying to do this war of attrition, having Israel fight and fight with all its might against Hamas, but then save its more or better endowed terror proxy Hezbollah for the next front of this war. Well, it has been going on, but I think that this escalation points to the fact that, well, the Hamas war is dwindling down. Let's start the next fight. And with regards to the IDF and the way that they are approaching this, my sources tell me they have always calculated that this war is going to begin. It was only a calculation of when and not if this war would begin. And they are well prepared to tackle this next front as well, very unfortunately, because this is just, senseless wars that are just, again, being puppeteered by Iran's regime. And it seems like Israel has no choice but to fight the tentacles and not be able to fight the actual source of the problem, which is Iran's regime.
A video posted on social media recently allegedly shows members of Hamas beating blindfolded and handcuffed civilians after they were caught taking humanitarian aid that was being hoarded in a Gaza warehouse being controlled by the terrorist group.
Right. And thank you, Hal, for bringing attention to this story, because you don't see the story and because it doesn't fit the narrative of the mainstream media. Where is the aid? Why are the people of Gaza starving? Well, there is plenty of aid. There's more aid going in there than there has been in a very long time. But where is that aid? Well, it's being hoarded and being stolen and being kept by Hamas. They are setting prices that are incredibly high. They are abusing the Gazan people. They have been abusing the Gazan people for a very long time. I remember a decade ago, I did a story on the people of the people of Gaza rather lashing out at Hamas as their leadership. But of course, they kill, they beat, they brutalize anybody who dares to speak out against Hamas. So we're looking for the brave people of Gaza to speak out and tell the world what they are dealing with, and that is this brutality of living under Hamas. That answers the question of where all this aid is. So there are videos now that show that this aid was hoarded by Hamas, of course, not giving it to the people, and the people who dared to go steal for their families were beaten very, very brutally. We had to kind of, we put a warning on the video, but it is up on the foreign desk if anybody wants to see it.
Let's talk about what's happening in the United Kingdom as well, Lisa. Labour is set to govern in the UK for the first time since 2010 after the Conservatives lost more than 200 seats. And that includes former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who became the first former PM to lose a seat in close to 100 years.
Yeah, this is, it's an interesting development, because we have always talked about the last few years how Europe is moving to the right because of many of the policies that have been very damaging, and there's buyer's remorse on a lot of the immigration policies, therefore changing basically changing just the population and changing a lot of the laws and changing a lot of the character of Europe. And while migration is wonderful, it seems like there's less assimilation that is leading to that change in character. This kind of flips the script a bit, and now we're looking at the opposite. We're looking at a lot of the leftists coming into government, and the right losing its voice. This is a continuation, Hal, and we talk about this a lot here. It's happening in the United States, but it seems like it happens in Europe first, and then it happens in the United States next. The pendulum swinging, right? One extreme, next extreme, one extreme to the next extreme, until we find that equilibrium, which it seems like because of this ping-ponging back and forth, we have not found an equilibrium. But all throughout the world, we're seeing extreme left, extreme right. And the people, it seems like, across the board are in the middle, and they want common sense policies that keep them safe, that keep their children safe, and give them a better life, give them prosperity, give them a chance at all those things. We shall see what will happen in the next few years, but I do think this is a very important moment, and it happened on the 4th of July, so it's pretty historic all across the board.
Now, speaking of elections here, a coalition of left-wing parties is projected to finish first in France's snap elections. President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance is expected to finish second, and Lisa, the populist National Rally Party, is projected to come in third.
Yeah, again, very, very interesting because when you see the protests on the streets, right? So I saw something. It was meant to be a funny meme, but there is some truth to it. Where if the left loses, they're protesting on the streets. When the left wins, they're protesting on the streets. So is it really about the election, or is it just about destroying society? And that's a lot of what we're seeing. We saw the protests overnight in France. And again, you think about the people who live there. If you love your country, why are you protesting? Why are you destroying property? We saw a lot of signs for Gaza, a lot of signs for death to Jews. I mean, what does that have to do with an election in France? All across the board, we're seeing a lot of these themes repeat themselves. And Hal, I'm sorry to say, this is one extreme, and this is the pendulum, but we're seeing Europe go in a way that there will be more buyer's remorse coming their way.
Well, the U.S. presidential election, as you know, is coming up in November, Lisa. Many are quite concerned with the mental health of both Joe Biden and Donald Trump. But now there's a new report that says Biden's personal physician met with a Parkinson's disease specialist at the White House. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is basically an investigative report that looks at, what truly is going on with Joe Biden, right? The debate, yes, a lot of people were like, well, we saw for the first time. Well, it's not the first time. If you actually look at a lot of the footage, you see that he's been declining very rapidly. And the media and the White House and his family have been hiding that from the world, and truthfully hiding it from those who want to be fooled, because many of us saw this happening in real time. And now, the question remains, how about national security? How about, what does Iran's regime or Russia or China think about these developments when you have somebody who's not, just cognitively, there and not able to run a country? This is the most important job in the world, and I say that without hyperbole. And now, there's questions about whether or not he is healthy enough to do that. And as you said, the question remains: why do we have two candidates who are above 70? And that also remains a question of strength and cognitive ability and stamina and all those things. So now, I mean, all eyes are on Joe Biden, his family, his ability to serve this country. And really, I think a lot of people right now are hoping that this country can put partisan politics aside for the election and choose the person who can best govern us going forward. Unfortunately, just like Europe, it's very left, very right. And although a lot of people are in the middle, you don't hear those voices as much as we should.
How vulnerable will this really make the United States? As you mentioned, China, Russia's watching the proceedings right now, and the mental capacity of the American president. Will China say, you know what, now's a great time to invade Taiwan?
Absolutely. And I think they made that calculation long before this debate. Look, for 4 years, even before the election between Trump and Biden in 2020, there was this vulnerability where the Iran regime, Russia, and China had an opinion. They had a voice in who should become president. Now, whether they actually participated in the elections or not, we don't need to talk about that. But the fact that they even had a say, I translated a lot of articles coming from Iran where the regime was actually hoping that Joe Biden would win, obviously, because the policies under Trump didn't serve them. But to think that our foreign policy is different between presidents, and so different that a tyrannical government wants to have a say in who becomes president of the United States, that is an embarrassment. There should be no daylight between presidents when it comes to dealing with our friends and our enemies abroad. Israel shouldn't worry about where they stand, regardless of who comes into office. The Iran regime shouldn't think that they will have either a heyday or they will be shut down based on who comes into office. And I think that is a bigger signal to us going forward that our national security, whether there should be another, God forbid, 9/11 on US soil, what happens to us in the Red Sea when the Houthis are shooting at us, when we have American hostages being held by Hamas, that should not, that should be the same calculations, whether it's a Democrat or Republican or independent in office. And I really hope, I think, foreign policy has never been a main issue. And I understand that people want to put food on the table. People care about jobs. People care about other things. But right now, when we're looking at the border, we're looking at China, we're looking at the Middle East, we're looking at, the fact that there are so many, migrants here that have been detected on the terror list, on the FBI's most wanted list. There are others who have not yet been detected, and that's even scarier. foreign policy, national security should become a main stage and main center issue of this election going forward because of the vulnerability that you mentioned.
Hurricane Beryl has left a swath of destruction in the Caribbean, and now the storm is set to hit the Texas coast as it regains hurricane level strength, Lisa, in the Gulf of Mexico. Are we talking about potential evacuations here?
That we might be. Texas, all of the border states have dealt with a lot, and inclement weather and storms are something that they are used to dealing with. If they need to evacuate, if they need to put up boards, they know how to handle that. But I think in the next few hours, we should find out how severe this will be, but the warnings are out.
American correspondent and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining us from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you.